Hello! We've got a new old school RuneScape poll, came out a couple of days ago, so let's go ahead and vote in this poll. So we'll just go ahead and vote. So this is the old school poll survey. At RuneFest they spoke about how they could change the poll system to suit our needs better. They wanted to put out a survey to find out what we think about the polls. Any changes that they need to make will have to go through a poll and will require 75% approval to change. So if you're unsure what they talked about and presented at RuneFest, please click here for their RuneFest presentation. Okay, so question 1. How do you vote in a poll? The options are: I vote only through the website, I vote mainly through the website, I vote mainly through the in-game poll booths, and I vote only through the in-game poll booths. Now I'm going to go ahead and click I vote mainly through the in-game poll booths, because I do have a tendency to sometimes check the polls on the website, but I generally vote in-game. Question 2. How important is an abstain option for you? This will mean that you're not forced to vote on every question in a poll. The options are: this will be very important to me, I will find this useful, this won't make any difference to me, and I would not want this at all. Now personally I think I'd find it useful. I don't particularly think it's important to me, but sometimes you get to a poll and you just think, this doesn't really affect me, I would find it useful, but I wouldn't think it's important. Next, question 3. Should the 75% threshold for an update to pass be changed? So the options are: it should be raised significantly, it should be raised slightly, it should not be changed, it should be lowered slightly, and it should be lowered significantly. Now personally I think it's an integral part of the game. It holds us together, and this is why old school is such a community driven game. I know a lot of people say it should be lowered. Obviously RuneScape 3 has the power to the player where they have 50% to one of the updates passes, but really that's a vote on which update you want to happen, not if the update should happen. Now obviously a lot of updates do get near the 75% and people get angry that they don't pass. For example, maybe one of the bigger ones recently was the Divine Spirit Shield. That got about 66%. Obviously it's a high percentage, but it's not a massive percent, and it didn't pass. Personally, I think the things that are near passing should be rethought a lot, and therefore repolled. For example, recently we had the Amulet of the Damned. This was an item from about a year ago. They kind of had an idea for buffing the Barrow's equipment. It's recently passed. It buffs it quite a lot, but obviously they did rethink the item through a lot. Things where I don't think they've rethought them through or redone them properly are things like the Dragon Pickaxe update, where you, instead of it just being updated Dragon Pickaxe, they made it so you have to get it as a barbarian, as a bounty hunter reward. As opposed to raising it, sometimes I think, yeah, sure, raise it. It makes sure everyone really likes the update, and the people that complain about things not getting 75% can complain about more. Personally, I think 75% is a good place for it to be. It's a really high number, but it's not ridiculously high. I think 80% would just be too much, whereas 70 is just really where people are complaining when their items aren't passing. So I'm going to say it should not be changed. Next, question 4. Should the 280 total level requirement to vote be changed? The options are: it should be raised significantly, it should be raised slightly, it should not be changed, it should be lowered slightly, or it should be lowered significantly. Now I don't think they really advertised the fact that you need 280 total level to vote, but personally I think it's a decent way to go. Most players that play a lot have 280. Obviously there's a few accounts that maybe just get a 99 and they've just got kind of a lower total level and they've played a lot. And then there's obviously a few accounts that sort of just level up all their levels sort of equally, a bit like I do, but they only get to about 280 and then they can affect these votes. Now I don't think it should be lowered particularly. Obviously there are a few players that have lower than 280, but if you are going to be spending a lot of time on the game, then you're going to have at least 280 to want things to happen. Changing it to be higher, I don't think it's particularly a good idea. Obviously when you get 280 you've been invested in the game long enough to start thinking about it, so really I don't think it should be changed. Next, question 5. Which of these methods do I think they should use as a requirement for voting? The options are combat level, quest points, in-game time, and total experience points. Now obviously it depends on what's being voted on. If it's a combat thing, I think obviously higher level combat people should be able to vote, but I think you shouldn't forget things like the level 3 skillers. They might not be wanting combat, but perhaps there's some kind of update which would affect them. For example, maybe potions in the bounty hunter store. People that make potions would be losing things. Quest points, there's not really many quest related updates that we're getting. I would like some, and I know many people would, but at the moment I'm not too sure about that. I think this is probably one of the ones that you want to think about at least. Next, in-game time. I think that this is a pretty big one. Obviously if you play a lot and you've got a lot of in-game time, then it shows that you have a lot of respect for the game. But then again, if you think about the players that aren't able to play the game much, but they still want to be able to be a part of the community, it's going to be harder for them to vote in that. And similarly with the total experience points. Some players, probably like me, have a lot of levels, but we don't particularly have the experience. Players like myself have a decent total level, but our total XP isn't majorly increased because we don't have these levels that are all the way to 99. All round players like myself, we do spend a lot of time in game, but we sort of level our skills off. We don't sort of have one skill with a lot more XP and therefore having a lot of total experience. Obviously there's the other types of players that spend little time in the game, but they just do one thing over and over, the thing that gives you the most amount of XP, so their total experience is going to be really high. As a requirement for voting in things, I think perhaps they're a good idea. I think the best one will probably be in-game time. Total experience would probably be quite good. Quest points and combat level, I'm actually going to say not as much, because we don't really have much quest related things coming into the game. And combat level, well, obviously everyone's affected by that. And finally, question 6. For questions that impact only certain areas of the game, should they apply additional restrictions to those that can vote to be sure that only players that will be affected will be able to vote? For example, only players with X number of Castle Wars games should be able to vote on Castle Wars updates. The options are, I think every player should be able to vote in every poll. I think that only on exceptionally important polls, the types of players who can vote should be restricted. And I think most polls should be restricted to those who have vested interest. Now obviously it's annoying if a skilling poll is happening and a lot of combat players say, why? We don't need this, and they vote it down. But I do think the game has quite a democracy, and I think every player should be able to vote in every poll. So let's go ahead and vote. Thank you for voting. So, question 1. How do we vote in polls? 60.5% only vote in in-game poll booths. 32.1% mainly vote in in-game poll booths. 5.2% mainly vote through the website, and 2.2% only vote through the website. So obviously there is a significant amount of people using the in-game poll booths, and I guess if they do eradicate the sort of website polls, then they can sort of have much more control over it. Next, question 2. Having an abstain option on the polls. 36% would find it very useful. 33.2% say it won't make any difference to them. 19.9% say it's very important to them, and 10.9% say they wouldn't want it at all. Question 3. Should the 75% threshold for an update to pass be changed? 41.7% say it should not be changed, which has actually relaxed me quite a bit, because I was worried a few months ago there was quite a lot of people going on the forums asking for this to be changed. 35.7% want it to be lowered slightly, 9.9% want it to be lowered significantly, 8.3% want it to be raised slightly, and 4.4% want it to be raised significantly. So obviously there is a stronger amount of players that want it to be lowered as opposed to being higher, but to be honest, the amount of players that think it shouldn't be changed, it sort of balances out to be not changing. So I'm really quite relaxed about that now. Question 4. Should the 200 in total level requirement to vote be changed? 36.9% say it should not be changed. 34.3% say it should be raised significantly. 20.4% say it should be raised slightly. 4.2% say it should be lowered significantly, and 4.2% say it should be lowered slightly. There are only a couple of votes different. I find this quite interesting that a lot of people are saying it should be raised as opposed to being lowered. So I'm quite amazed by that. Next, question 5. Which of these methods do we think should be used as a requirement for voting? 63.5% want in-game time to be used as a requirement for voting. The next best one is total experience points, which is 56.7%. Next is the combat level requirement, which is 29.1%, and 27.6% think that quest points should be used as a requirement for voting. So obviously people are thinking in-game time is a good one, total experience points is also a good one. Combat level and quest points are alright, but not so much as the other two. And that's my sort of train of thought as well. And finally, for questions that only impact certain areas of the game, should they apply additional restrictions to who can vote to be sure that only players that will be affected will be able to vote? 47.7% think that every player should be able to vote in every poll. 34% think that only on exceptionally important polls the types of players who can vote should be restricted. And 18.3% think that most polls should be restricted to those who have an invested interest. So it's quite relaxing to know that most people think that everyone should be able to vote in that. I'm pretty happy with this poll. There's nothing I am really against. Obviously it's just more of a survey to find out how we're thinking as opposed to something changing. I assume obviously if we all wanted say the pass rate to be changed, then they would. But looking at this, it's quite relaxing knowing that they're probably not going to do that because a majority prefer it to be where it is now. So we've had 15,546 votes, and it's been up for a couple of days, which is quite shocking, thinking we usually get about 20 to 30,000 votes. So if you've not voted in this poll yet, please go ahead and vote. It's just a simple survey to find out how we're voting in game and what we think about the voting system. Obviously it is a key part of the game as it is a community run game. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and share, and if you want to keep up to date with old school RuneScape updates, dev blogs and polls, please subscribe. I've been Lewis, thanks for watching, goodbye.